Greetings, everyone. Welcome. I'm designing this grammar workshop in this course around cutting clutter from your writing. This is a good thing to do as we approach the end of the semester. As you work on your last paper, the classic argument, it's also good for looking back at all the last few papers we've done because clutter, you can cut clutter out of your writing, out of your sentences. Your writing is much stronger for it. Okay. So I have a good sheet that I prepared on. Well, I didn't prepare it, but I found on Clutter. Has some good tips. Now I will just kind of walk you down through the list, talk about them. I am going to give you a quiz on Blackboard about this list. So the quiz that I will give, it will cover most of the stuff. We're just going to ignore the first point just because I do ask you to use first person a lot in this class. That's just don't draw excessive attention to the writer. That's an old school kind of thing. I don't really buy it. But number 2 is good advice. Don't use verbs that require helping verbs if a simpler form will do. So what this means, you don't have to use if you're using a be verb, so am, is, are, was, were, with an ing word to kind of help it. Most of the time, that's writing that can be cut. You can just use the simple action verb in its place. So instead of saying the cooks were preparing pea soup last night, you can just use the cooks prepared pea soup. Instead of saying Sarah would take all the criticism, Sarah took all the criticism. I will have eaten, I will eat. So if you have those words, am, is, are, was, were, with the helping verb, Jose was slaughtering the dragon. Jose slaughtered the dragon. If you see a verb like that, cut it down to its more simple form. Number 3 is one that I see a lot in freshman student writing. You can normally rewrite sentences that start with there. Instead of saying there was a rhinoceros charging across the road, you see that we can cut the there was and just make the ing like word a normal verb. So a rhinoceros charged across the road. Simple as that. You guys can see how this is forming the sentence is way more cluttered than this one. If you have a sentence that starts with there is, there was, there are, see if you can rework it. I'll show you how to find these in your papers in a second. Number 4, it says it's usually good not to start a sentence with the word it, which I think is good advice. So it was a cold night when the cows broke out. Well, there's ways you can write that that eliminates clutter. On a cold night, the cows broke out. On a cold night, the cows broke out. There should be a comma after that, by the way. Usually you want to start a sentence. You have an initial phrase like this. You want to put a comma after it. It's too bad they lost the game. You can just say, unfortunately, they lost the game. You guys see what it means. If you have a sentence that starts with it, most of the time you can trim those extra words out. Number 5 is good advice. Don't use 2 or more action verbs when only one is needed. So Nate began to cry. Nate cried, right? It means the same exact thing. Mom started to holler after Gloria broke the vase. Mom hollered after Gloria broke the vase. That sounds bad, right? But that's technically our dialect isn't incorrect. So number 6, cut the adverbs. Cut adverbs. So this is something this is something I really want to stress. I just used the word really. I shouldn't have. But most of the time, you can cut adverbs out of your writing, and your writing will mean the same thing. So any word that ends with ly, 95% of the time, you can cut those, and the sentence will maintain its meaning. Those types of words are just padding that you add onto your writing that makes your writing longer. It might make your writing look longer, but it doesn't make your writing better. Adverbs are lazy writing. There's also a few other words that don't end in adverbs that don't end in ly. One moment, and I will give you a list. Very is one that does not end in ly. Often is an adverb that doesn't end in ly. Very and often are usually the main culprits. Still is a word that doesn't end in ly. Very often still. Again is an adverb that doesn't end in ly. Most of the time you can cut those. So very often, again, still. I'll show you how to find those in a moment. We'll skip number 7. Number 8, we've talked about relative clauses before in this class. He thought that he was late. That's technically the correct grammar. But if you have a that in a sentence in that way, you can usually cut it out of your writings. He thought he was late. The that is naturally implied within our language and within the spoken language. If we say he thought he was late, that is naturally part of the grammar of our language. We don't have to say it, that we don't have to write it or say it. It's implied. That one's not too big a deal. It's good advice. Number 9, use the active voice rather than the passive. I think we've talked about this one before in this class. So instead of saying Kate, but in case I didn't, Kate swept the porch is active, meaning Kate is taking action on the porch. Swept is a verb that shows she's acting on the porch. Passive voice, the porch was swept by Kate. There's no action in this sentence. The porch this is called a passive sentence. The porch is being acted upon by Kate. In English class, most of the time you want to stick to the active voice. The passive voice is used in the sciences. So if you write something like a lab report, you kind of want to take yourself out of the writing. Right? You want to be objective. That's what the passive voice is for. You use the passive voice in science class, but not in English class or in any other class that isn't sciences. Number 10 is good advice. Don't use phrases that add words, not meaning. So, due to the fact that, because means the same thing. In the event that, if means the same thing. The present time, now. Lots of those kinds of phrases you can cut when your writing's better for it. I said a minute ago, try not to use that very is a rather, very, a little, pretty good, somewhat, sort of. These are qualifiers, those that are adverbs, and you can cut those most usually. We'll skip number 12. And then the rest of the sheet just shows you a few examples. you can use on your own. So as far as cutting the clutter from your writing, see that I pull a sample essay up that a student wrote for me a long time ago. So note that you don't see me at the moment. Note that I'm using a Mac, Microsoft Word, to make this video. So at the very top of a Mac computer, we have the search button where I have the word very typed. To do the same exact thing on a PC, you just hit Control F. And it pulls this same exact thing up. Control F. But let's say we want to cut some adverbs out of a sentence. This is a tool that's good for that. So I'm going to type ly. Well, it's going to point to every instance where lys are used in the paper. See me scrolling through. Some of them are within quotes. If they're within quotes, keep them. Most of the time, or there's some ly words that are there's some lys that are within other words. Most of the time, they're adverbs like actually, frankly, purposely, simply, similarly, simply. These are words that you can cut out of your writing to make the writing better. Everybody does this. You know, like recently finished a 50-page long dissertation chapter for my doctorate. And I had over 200 of those and cut most of them. To cut those kinds of words, you can type very. You can see all of the instances. Some of them are built. Some of the varies are built in other words like every. You can see several varies that can be cut. You can type there are. So there an instance there are, or we can just type there. Yeah, there's a there is for this sentence. So on the clutter sheet that I just showed you, then go back to it. See the strategies that the sheet has mentioned. You know, then hit Control F or go to the search bar on Word and run some searches in this way. That can help you cut some clutter out of your writing. It doesn't matter what class this is for. This is all. It doesn't matter if you're in English 101, 102, or any other English class, any other class, not English for that matter. Cutting clutter is good practice. That's something that you should always do before you turn the paper in. Give it a good clutter search. Okay? Don't worry about clutter when you're writing. When you're in the process of writing. But as you're editing and revising before you turn something in, spend about an hour or so, cut the clutter out, and your writing is going to be much better for it. So this is the lesson. I'm going to give you a quiz on it. Use the sheet. Everything on the quiz will be on the sheet. Till then, signing off.